Hello, my football friends. This is Darren Hayes of Pigskin Dispatch. We've been having a great time talking about the first 100 years of the New York Giants. We're celebrating the 2024 season for being their 100th season. So we're going through the history and just having a ball, picking up some of our friends, some recordings over the last 4 or 5 years that we've had on Pigskin Dispatch podcast. And we do one of those today that talks about some Giants history. And one of the people that helped inspire and point out that the Giants 100 season is coming up is Larry Schmitt. Now, this recording is from Larry as we talked about the great jersey number ones in our jersey series that we did back in 2021. But Larry has a special twist on all the New York Giants that wore the number one. He's coming up next to tell us all about it.
This is the Pigskin Daily History Dispatch, a podcast that covers the anniversaries of American football events throughout history. Your host, Darren Hayes, is podcasting from America's North Shore to bring you the memories of the gridiron, one day at a time.
Doing my research, and I remembered that, several prominent Giants wore number one, and they're all players who had played in the 1920s and early 1930s, because the number one was retired by the Giants in 1935 in honor of Ray Flaherty, and that is the first instance in North American professional sports where a number was retired in a player's honor.
Wow. And we're starting it off right then, huh?
Yeah. Yep. So they retired that number for Flaherty in 35, but the Giants had a tradition where when they started playing in 1925, their featured player or their marquee player that they wanted to draw fans' attention to were given the number one. So in the Giants' first season in 1925, it was halfback Hinkie Haynes who wore number one that season. Then in 1926, Haynes switched his number to 2, and they gave number 1 to fullback and their best passer, Jack McBride. And McBride wore number 1 for the next 3 seasons for the Giants from 26 to 1928. And then McBride left the Giants. He went to Providence, and the Giants had purchased the entire Detroit Wolverine franchise so they could get Benny Friedman to be their quarterback.
Ah.
So obviously, when you buy a whole team to get one player, you're going to put number 1 on the back of his jersey.
I guess so.
Yeah, and Benny Friedman in 1929 set the NFL record at that time for 20 touchdown passes, which stood for, I can't remember the exact number of years. I know that 20 touchdown passes was the record until the 1940s. He had that for almost 20 years.
Wow.
And then Friedman went to the Brooklyn Dodgers, and then Ray Flaherty, who had been on the Giants in 29, but he wore number 44, and then he was on the Giants again in 31. He wore number 6. But Ray Flaherty got the number 1 in 1932, and he wore it until 1935, because he was the team captain, and he was also head coach Steve Owens' first, assistant coach. He was a player coach. So he wore the number 1, and then when he retired as a player, the Giants retired his number 1.
Huh.
What they did in 1946, they unretired number 1 for 2 years. They gave it to Frank Cope, who was a tackle, and he had been on the Giants for over 10 years, and he was a captain, and he had worn number 36 for most of his career, but his last 2 years, they allowed him to wear number 1, and then when he retired in 1947, no Giant has worn the number 1 since.
Now, that was a lot of research, and we really thank Larry for doing that a couple years ago and sharing that with us on these number ones. Just think about that. That number's retired, and all of the players that wore it, and they were within that first 15 years of the Giants franchise. So fantastic job by Larry. We thank you for listening to that, and thank you, Larry, for putting that together for us a couple years ago. But we're going to hear more from Larry in our series. He's going to be coming on doing some new stuff with us, as well as we'll have some other recordings of him talking about some famous players, plays, and people of the New York Giants in their 100 years of playing football in a National Football League. So we hope you keep joining us for this great series. Until next time, everybody, have a great Gridiron Day. That's all the football history we have today, folks. Join us back tomorrow for more of your football history. We invite you to check out our website, pigskindispatch.com, not only to see the daily football history, but to experience positive football with our many articles on the good people of the game, as well as our own football comic strip, Cleat Marks Comics. Pigskindispatch.com is also on social media outlets, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and don't forget the Pigskin Dispatch YouTube channel to get all of your positive football news and history. Special thanks to the talents of Mike and Gene Monroe, as well as Jason Neff for letting us use their music during our podcast.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.